So the date is what, October 2nd? We
Mm-hmm.
have almost 4 weeks. We
I've
are
already
down,
voted.
huh?
I've already voted.
Oh, so I live in Florida and I am a registered Democrat, and my registration got lost for a couple of weeks. So we figured it all out and we're back on the registration list. We should be getting our polling place soon. But yeah, because they kept saying, make sure you're checking your registration to make sure that you're registered and that you didn't get pulled off the records. And so just for shits and giggles, I was talking to my son in Manhattan and I was telling him, make sure you're registered because he's been living in Manhattan now for 2 years. So he's never voted. So he hasn't voted yet in
Okay.
Manhattan. So anytime that he's voted before that, he was in college. So he got absentee ballots. So before we moved, we got both their absentee ballots because they both at some point were in college when they had to vote.
Okay.
So for whatever reason, they're still on that list. So we got their absentee ballots.
Okay.
I said to him, I'm like, are you going to vote absentee because you need to get this ballot here, or are you going to go in and vote? So I believe he wanted to go in and vote. So the absentee ballots are still either on the kitchen table in New York or they have been thrown away somewhere. So my younger one votes around the corner from us, so that's not a big deal. So it's my older one. Now, my older one lives in Manhattan. So I'm like, I'm not going to say anything, but I was like, if you don't vote, I don't think New York is going to miss your vote.
Right.
If you were me in Florida, I would say get your ass to a polling place like today because
Mm-hmm.
I have to say though, being in Florida, everybody, before we moved here, everybody said to me, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're moving to Florida. You're going to be with all the MAGAs and blah, blah, blah." And honestly, I have not met one MAGA. I have not seen one sign. I have not overheard one conversation. Nothing. I have not even seen one commercial. Actually, until last night during the debate, the vice presidential debate, I had not seen a Trump commercial. Now in New York, where we're a blue state all the time, that's all you see are Trump commercials. You don't see anything for Harris up in New York.
Mm-hmm.
There's only Trump signs, and it's not in New York. It was obnoxious. The Trump the MAGAs. There were pickup trucks with three or four flags
Yeah.
hanging off of them. They had where we were, there's this one jeweler who up and down the road would put up flags and signs and pictures of Trump and every week the signs were getting bigger and more obnoxious. The cul-de-sac that I lived on, the people were lovely when you spoke to them one on one, very nice. But they were MAGAs, and the whole block covered in MAGA paraphernalia. I mean, they had a Trump flag flying from 2016, and then it would shred, and then they would put up another one, and then that one would shred. Since I moved there, there's always been a Trump flag flying like 10 feet outside my window.
Oh, wow.
But in Florida, and now it might be because of the HOAs where you're not allowed to put out political signage. And for that alone, I will pay my HOA fees and not
Mm-hmm.
complain about it.
Right.
Uh, I have one student right now who has a Harris sign on her front lawn. So we're sectioned off in little communities, right? Now, my community is 55 and over. You don't have to be 55. Did you know in 55 and over communities, it's 20/80. So 80% of the people have to be over 55, but 20% of the people can be any age. So that's why we're able to live here.
Oh, wow.
So, and everybody around here though is retired. So they're like, they call me North Lake at the pool when they see me. And they're like, oh, are you here on your lunch break? Poor baby, you have to go back to work. I'm like, yeah, well, some of us haven't gotten to 55 yet, and some of us haven't gotten to 70 yet. So,
Right.
I still have plenty of time. I'm still not going to be 55 for quite a while. So anyway, the community next to us, where I'm teaching in one of the communities, she has a Harris sign on her front lawn. So when she put it up last week, I was like, "Oh, I'm like, I love your front lawn sign." And she's like, I was afraid to put it up until after you left because I didn't know, what where you were, and I didn't want to like, piss you off or insult you or whatever. We had just met. It's only been the first month down here, right? I was like, oh God, no. She's like, oh, well, then let me tell you. And she was like, the people next door. She's like, there are MAGAs around, but I'm like, they're quiet. Like, I haven't seen them anywhere. So she's getting me a sign for my front lawn. I'm like, I can't put it up on my front lawn. She's like, oh, you can put it in your window. My HOA will be like, out of there. You're not allowed to
Right.
have it in there. But I have to say, I think the people who live where I am, there's only like five houses here. I think they're all Harris because one's got like the magic eye or the third eye
Mm-hmm.
hanging from the door. A couple of them have like Volkswagens. Like you can kind of like there's no real pickup trucks around.
Yeah.
Everybody's everybody's older, which would make me think that they were conservative,
Right.
but I don't think they are. I don't think they are conservative. I think this election, the people who are going to flip to vote Democrat are the conservatives that are the mainstream Republicans that really just, I think right now here, it's just the MAGAs now that are going to be voting for him.
Right.
Like where before it was mixed with Republicans, conservatives,
Right.
libertarians.
Yeah.
They all gravitated towards the more conservative. But now I think it's flipped. Now I think it's only the MAGAs, and there's not a lot of them. They're just very, very loud.
Right.
You know, in Florida where it's so purple and it just flips back and forth. And our elections are so close here. Like it's 50 to 51. Like it's not a red state like Texas is red, where
Right.
it's across the board. There's only pockets of blue.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I live in the Blue Corridor. So the Blue Corridor goes almost all the way through Central Florida up by Orlando and comes all the way down through Osceola where I am, and then kind of goes out towards the water. But it's very, very blue here.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen more Harris than I've seen Trump. And honestly, I really haven't seen a lot of either.
Right.
So,
Well, that's
cross.
got to be nice, you know.
Yeah. Plus, we have a terrible governor. Um, DeSantis is just, oh my God, what a turd. And Rick Scott. Like they're trying, like Rick Scott, he won by like a percent.
Mm.
So they're really hoping that I forget her name, I'll look it up. They're really hoping that she can kind of take over and because
With the down
if we
ballot
can
voting.
yeah, yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. If we can flip Florida, we're in good shape. Like everybody's so worried about Pennsylvania. I was like, Florida is being very quiet. Like I think you guys aren't paying attention to Florida because
Yeah.
the people that are in Florida are not it's not what's being broadcast on the news.
Mm.
Like we are not those crazy. I mean, there are some crazy ones down here, but it's normal. Like
Yeah.
you wouldn't even know in Florida. People are like, "Oh my God, Florida, they're the craziest people in the country." I'm like, they're really not. They're really very, very, they're very nice. I have
Right.
not met anybody yet who has been like awful. But
Well,
in New
that's
York,
good.
you run into that daily. So
Yeah.
here it's very, yeah.
Good. I'm happy to hear that for you.
They're not very political down here. And you would think that they are, and they're not.
Hmm.
So,
I want to talk to you about the debate last night, but the
mhm.
one point that you just touched on that kills me is the absolute my biggest pet peeve of this whole thing, and I don't understand why no one, if there's corrections being put out there, I haven't seen them. But when they're all like, when the criticism comes to Harris and, well, she's been in the position for 3.5 years, why hasn't she done anything? I'm going because she's vice president. It's a ceremonial
Right. And
position. She works at the
right.
discretion of the president. Like she has no authority. So when they've been
Exactly.
pushing this whole um, agenda of she hasn't done anything, that's because she's not president. And I got
Right.
into a conversation um, with it's been a few different people about this topic where I've gone, do you understand what her role is? And they were like, well, obviously no, because she's not doing anything. I'm like, she isn't supposed to be doing anything. Here are her responsibilities. And I've had to explain basic American governance to middle-aged people. And they're like, well, why do they keep saying it? And I'm like, because I have not ever said this to somebody, but in my mind, I'm like, because dumb people don't question what they hear. And if they keep saying this over and over, which they do with their talking points, but this particular one, why doesn't anyone go because she's not president? And what killed me, um, now in the debate last night, and we'll kick it off this way. Walls did touch on that. But the thing that I think Vance did effectively, which goes hand in hand with this issue, is that he kept saying the Harris administration or the Harris policies. And I'm sitting there going, she's not the president. These are not her policies. This is not her positioning. She works at
Right.
the discretion of Joe Biden. And so, but all throughout the night, he kept saying that. And
It's their
um,
talking point. That's why
yeah,
they could not figure out how to define her. And Trump kept, of course, going off the rails. The other day, he's like, she's stupid. I'm like, someone must have called him stupid the other day because all he does is deflect. Whatever he's doing, he'll say about somebody else. So
mhm.
he was going on and on. I mean, I wasn't even watching the news, but every time I kind of flipped through, that's all they were talking about on all the stations about how he called her unintelligent, stupid. There was
Mentally
another
disabled.
mentally disabled. I was like, oh, he must have had a doctor's appointment and was told he was mentally disabled and that he was stupid and unintelligent. Because, like, where did he even come up with those three words? I don't even think he's smart enough to come up with those three words or know what they mean. So something was going on. Yeah. But I think that's how they're trying to define her. And you're right. People who either don't follow politics or they don't have a basic understanding about how government works to no fault of their own, because we're not taught this in school. And I think one of the reasons we're not taught this in school is so that something like this could happen. They want you to not pay attention to what's going on to the man behind the curtain because he's the one making all the decisions. And if we pull the curtain back and we really listen to what they're saying and what they're doing, we're not going to be happy about it. So if they don't educate you on how government works, you don't pay attention to it. If
Didn't
they
you
make
have a
it,
government class in high school?
yeah, do you remember it? Do you
Oh,
remember the government class? And
well,
how long was it? It was maybe a semester. That's it.
oh
And
no,
you didn't learn. What did you learn?
I had a whole year of American politics in
In the
I
United
had to have
States?
had okay, I will say that when I went to college, my freshman year, I was a political administration um major. So I was studying politics in college until I switched. Um,
College. You were doing it in
so,
college.
but
The people
I had
that are voting,
I had an American government class in high school though.
yeah, but it probably was mixed in with history, a history class. There's no like real government classes unless you took that as an elective. And if you were a political science major in college, the people who Trump, the people who Trump who follow Trump didn't go to college.
Right.
They're undereducated
Yeah.
white males in blue collar. Blue
Hmm.
collar? Yeah, blue collar. They
Yeah.
didn't go to college. They didn't take
No.
political science.
Right.
The most government education they have probably came from Saturday morning cartoons with what was it, the Bill of Rights? What was that series?
A Schoolhouse
Um,
Rock.
Schoolhouse Rock. Yeah.
Right.
And I'll bet you that's where they got it from,
Mm.
their education. So when
Yeah,
they
could
come and
be.
they tell, I mean, I have a couple of MAGAs that I know, and they are headliners. So when they talk in headlines.
Mhm.
What has she done? Here's a list of what she's done.
Right.
What has Trump done? Well, Trump was good. His policies were good. What were his policies that
Right.
were good? So if you're going to scrutinize her on what has she done,
Right.
what did he do? He didn't build the wall. He didn't stop Russia. He didn't stop China. He didn't stop North Korea. What did he do? What did he do? He locked everyone in their house for 2 years and told us to drink bleach. That's what he did. Yeah. I'm like,
Well, and
what has this?
that's the other thing that I find so curious that nobody kind of goes, well, hey, let's talk about this a little bit, is when they're like, well, life under Trump was so great, the economy was great, this and that. Well, and there was no wars. That was the other thing. Like there was no conflict internationally when
Because
he was
no one
president.
was allowed to go outside
Yeah, I
all
was
over
just
the
going to say the whole
world.
world shut down when he was president. So, of course, like, I mean, yeah, there could have been international incidences, but there weren't because nobody was doing anything. There was no infrastructure, there was nothing happening. Like the world came to a stop.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and so that is like
And
I'm
because
kind
of
of
his
going, when
buffoonery.
you let's
Yeah.
remember, let's put this in perspective. Life under Trump was quarantine.
Yeah, which they all have amnesia about.
Mhm,
He killed because of his buffoonery and because he wouldn't give in to, a mask mandate or a vaccine mandate, and he didn't want to piss someone off or he didn't want anyone to tell them what to do. He killed over 1 million people. 1 million people died needlessly
mhm,
because he would not listen to the WHO.
mhm,
Why? Because you're a fucking narcissist and you cannot be anywhere near the White House ever again. This guy gets near the White House again, we are fucked. And not the white man walking around. And I don't understand how white women are taking a seat and not doing anything. You are losing your rights. It doesn't matter what color your skin is. They call white women Karens to shut them up. They are not any higher than anybody else on the spectrum. They think they're right up there with white men. No, darling, you're underneath every other type of man there is, including transgender, and then the women start. Okay, so you want to go according to what the Republic or what the MAGAs are doing? That's what they're doing. It's every single man, then you, and then it goes down from there. So get your heads out of your asses. You are no better than any of the rest of us, and they are not going to give you an abortion and not give someone else an abortion just because your skin is transparent and theirs is not.
mhm.
Yep.
So what were your thoughts on the debate last night?
So at first, I thought Waltz looked very nervous.
Hmm.
And his first couple of, I guess, his first couple of times, he was very nervous, which made me kind of nervous.
Hmm.
And Vance is a very polished speaker. And what I had said to my mom is here for a couple of weeks, and so we were watching it, and Jason so the three of us were watching it, and I was like, the Democrats may have shot themselves in the foot by painting him as an idiot because the way he's speaking, he's not an idiot.
Hmm.
And if they're looking to see if Trump, something should happen to Trump, if this guy could come in on day one and take over. And the scary thing is yes, he probably can because he's such an eloquent speaker that if you're just listening to him, you're like, all right, well, he seems pretty, blah, blah, blah. And then you listen to him and you're like, oh my God, you know, he's saying something. And you got to really listen to what he's saying. A couple of times, well, he lied a few times. He lied about saying that he wasn't um, for a national abortion ban, where they have him I mean, writing it down, saying it out loud, going on the radio, putting it in Project 2025. I mean, he has his hands all over this. So he
Right.
he outright lied about that.
Yep.
And then at the end, when he did not, which I'm glad that the news picked up on it because while we were watching it live, we were saying that. We were like, he's not answering that question about January 20th, January 6th. And he's not saying that he wouldn't do that. And like that alone has to be scaring the crap out of everybody. Like if we
Hmm.
get a vice president in there that says, yes, I will follow what you're doing, that's very scary. So I think those two things, for whatever he was saying, for whatever he was twisting around, whatever he was sugarcoating while he was speaking, those two things at the end, I think he lost,
Yep.
and he lost a lot of people because of that. Tim
Yep.
Walz may not have been as eloquent, but he got his point across. He answered every question. He may have pivoted on a couple of things,
Yep.
but for the most part, he answered the question. What I really liked about him was he ended before the time was up every time
Mm.
because he was respectful of people's time. He wasn't trying to showboat, and he was respecting the monitors, which
Right.
Vance did not do either, as he spoke over them. He was trying to bully them into letting him speak. And I was like, shut off his mic. And eventually they did shut off his mic.
Right.
But yeah, he was yeah, he's sneaky. He's a snake. Like you look at him and you're like, oh man, he just looks like a dick. Like he just looks like the high school dick. Like he looks like that kid in high school that you're just like, ah, like, and all the popular girls are like hanging on him. You're like, ugh, and then when you meet him at 30-year reunion, he's the big fat bald guy who is sitting at the bar every day and did absolutely, that's JD Vance, right? That's where that's where my mind goes when I see it. There's a couple of people from high school that I'm like, oh yeah, that's exactly Andy Taub. Come on, right? Yeah, right? With that, is that it? That's like that. If for anyone who knows us, that's who JD Vance is. Yeah.
Well, the
So
thing is that, I mean, they both had goals to achieve in this debate. And I think one of them that backfired spectacularly for Vance was that he's underwater with his likability um, percentages or whatever it is. Um,
yeah.
and so I thought it was funny when he tried to be likable because it just didn't work because it wasn't him. So, my beautiful wife, like how many times did he say that? And my five children and, um and there
Does he
was
have five? He has five children?
three, five, whatever, however many he has, but he kept saying my young children, we're all like whatever. Um but it was
Young children that he doesn't take care of. He doesn't
right,
take care of those kids. His
right.
mother-in-law takes care of those kids.
Okay. Well, I mean, isn't everybody's mother-in-law supposed to be taking care of their grandkids?
Yeah,
Um,
because women over 50 have no value except to take care of their
yeah,
grandchildren.
yeah, it's the solution to the childcare crisis. Um, but I think it was either I can't remember if Walls talked about when his absolute perfect and truthful answer about guns and Sandy Hook when when they said you used to support this and now you don't. And he was like, I sat with parents whose children were shot and murdered. Like all of us, I think collectively went,
Yeah,
you know, and
exactly.
I think that might have
Exactly.
been the moment when Vance went, what did he made some comment like, um, Christ have mercy or something like that. And it was kind of like, ew. Like
Yeah.
that is not
Was
something
it that
natural that you
one?
would say.
Was it Christ? Yeah, he did say Christ have mercy, and I was like, oh my God, he's such a panderer.
Yeah,
But was it? It was when Walt said his son witnessed a shooting.
yeah. I mean, it had something to do with that, yeah. But it was again like, he's trying to, he had multiple points. He had to please Trump. He had to press home the whole thing that every problem's blame is Harris, her policies, which don't exist because she's vice president, and all of the
Right.
illegal immigrants because they're to blame for everything. Like
If he had said illegal immigrants
every
one more
answer,
time,
every
oh,
answer.
yeah,
It was a
exactly.
masterclass in being an absolute slime ball, and
Absolutely.
it just and
And coming
again,
off as if you're saying something worthwhile. Because that's what I kept going back to is like, he sounds very intelligent. He sounds like he knows what he's saying. Like when he said, we want to support women, you're lying.
yeah,
You're lying. But you're lying with a smile on your face, looking into the camera, and people who aren't paying attention to that underlying part of you are believing what you're saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I,
It
I
was
found the whole thing
definitely a
very
master class.
frustrating.
I love and I hope that I haven't been on social media or read anything since last night or earlier this morning is for me. Um, but his opening line of "You're not supposed to be fact checking me," like
Yeah. Yeah.
holy moly! I'm like, that's how you're going to
And
start
then
your
at one
debate
point, I
performance?
think at one point I think he's like, you're not yeah, you're not supposed to be fact checking me and you're not fact checking him or something. He said something stupid like that.
Yeah,
I was like, maybe because he's not lying. So stop lying and you're being fact checked on things that we all know. So you're lying, you're telling us something that we all know and you're just trying to convince us that we don't know it.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
been
It's
their strategy
interesting. I mean,
2016.
I can appreciate the fact that it was civil. They weren't name calling. There wasn't, that high level tension that we were all like with Trump and
Right.
Harris. But I mean, again, yeah, if you look at it at the surface, he was polished, he was practiced, and went to Yale. I'm sure this was, exactly how they um
Them in at
groom
Yale
you to
to do
be,
this.
but um if you go and get into the substance of it, you know,
Yeah.
you gotta,
Yeah.
for me, what mattered was that someone was talking from their personal political experience and successes, you know. And yeah, who gives a shit about like messing up a date? Like, 30 years ago, can you tell me where you were doing in July? Like,
Right.
I can barely remember what I
Yeah,
did
that
this past July.
now if those fuckers can brush off Trump saying what he has said about um being famous and grabbing women and write that off as locker talk, then we certainly can take something that Waltz did but misspoke about it.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he made it up. He was there. He was just there at a different time that he said he like, okay, but your guy raped somebody and you're okay with that. But Tim Waltz, who is in the military, misspoke about a base that he was on at a certain time, but he was there. That you're gonna drag him through the streets with. Really? But the rapist is okay because that's okay because it was a crime against a woman and women don't really mean anything in the MAGA movement, which makes me crazy that there's so many women in the MAGA movement.
It doesn't make sense. So let me ask you this then, because I am so far removed. Um, what is the sense of, I mean, because all of the news that I see keep saying how this is such a tight race, such a tight race, such a tight race. And I don't have, other than talking to people, friends, and I don't normally talk politics with my friends, when I have other more important things to talk to them about. Um,
Right.
but, I ask, so this is my question to you is like, what is your sense of the energy or, like, do you think the polls are reflective of what the mindset is? Um, Only because I heard, I can't remember who it was that was saying, polls are great, but polls are a picture of the past. Whereas if you look at a Vegas sports book, and look at the odds, they're forward facing. They're always, like looking into the future to set the bets and the wages and things like that, wagers. So, you have this dynamic of a poll and then, you know, a, a spread, I guess you could say, in gambling.
Right.
And how do you think that is
But what
reflective
is what
with
is the
the,
spread saying?
oh, that it's going to be a Harris win by a lot.
Yeah, I think that what's happening in the polls right now is that they're very selective with who they poll. They like to poll rural southern areas. They don't poll up in the north. If they polled in the north, it would always be a Democrat. If they poll in the south, it's always going to be a Republican. And not so much that Republicans or I can't it's not Republicans. It's MAGAs. Republicans, a lot of Republicans are moving over to the Democratic side for this election because they don't want the MAGAs in there.
Hmm.
So that right there is we have now it's kind of like a three-party system, but the two parties are still voting together.
Hmm.
Because if you talk, I know a lot of Republicans, women, and they've always voted Republican. They, for the most part, voted for Trump the first time, the second time they didn't, and this time they're not either. There's a lot of that going on. And there's a lot of, I think, so the way that the country is set up, for people that don't know, our borders or our coasts are very blue because that's where the majority of people are. That's where the majority of universities and higher education is, and it's the ports to the rest of the world. So they tend to vote more Democratic, even all the way down the East Coast. The East Coast, those southern states, they're very purplish, you know. They do kind of tend to win Republican, but it's because a lot of their land is spread out. And in Florida, if you look at the political map in Florida, which is probably very close to what the United States map is, Florida is a peninsula. So we're covered in water on three sides of us. And then we have a little part on the top that is also part of it is by water as well. And those coastlines are where the cities are. So you have Tampa, you have Miami, you have Orlando, you have all the big cities, and they're blue. And then you have the middle of the country, the middle of the state, which is rural, which means the houses are miles apart from each other. It's farmland, and farms go on for miles and miles and miles. So if you get a house and then 15 miles down the road, you got another house. And when in a county, if there's only 1,000 people and 500 of them or 600 of them vote Republican, the whole town goes red. That doesn't mean that it's a red area and that it's, all MAGAs. It just means that in that section there's not a lot of people.
Hmm.
So the four people that vote all voted Republican. That's not a million people voting, it's four, but they get the red because there's only four of them.
Right.
And that's what happens in our country too. The coasts are all blue, but the middle, because the middle of our country is so big and it's so spread out that it looks like it's red all the way across. But if you look at a map that has the pockets, so you can't look at a block, you got to look at the pockets.
Hmm.
It's blue. The country is blue, but it's just a big country.
Hmm.
So I think a lot of the polling is done in those areas where it's red because there's only four people. So if you're only polling four people and they
Right.
all happen to vote red, then they're going to show that the polls are very close to each other. Now, if
Hmm.
you go into Manhattan and you poll, say, 600 people, well, 500 of them are going to be blue because you're in Manhattan,
Right.
right? So it's going to turn blue. So I don't think the polls are doing anything. I think what you need to do is you need to actually talk to people to get a sense. So in my little community, if I talk to 15 people, five of them are MAGAs, but 10 of them are Harris, well, then that's blue.
Right.
But when you put us all together with the county next to us, who's very small and red, we're going to turn red. So it's
Do you
not,
think
it just,
do you think the polling then is a purposeful, what do I want to say here? What do I want to say? Do you think it's intentional to create drama or political theater that it's okay, well, let me ask you this. Now, I'm trying to think of how to explain what I have in my head. Like, okay, so right now it's so close. It's 48-49, right? In either direction, plus or minus 3 points of
right.
error. Um, do you think that that's polling is purposeful to increase engagement or to create drama, um, instead of doing a more comprehensive reporting on what the vibe is? Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to get at here?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think the polling is there, one, to get people to, um, well, when he ran the first time in 2016 and the polls were close, I kept saying they're lying to us so that we'll get out there and vote so that he does not become president. I really thought that the polling they were they were lying about the polling because they were so afraid that this jackass was going to get into power that they were telling us he was going to win, that the polls were showing that he was going to win so that we would get out there and vote. Now, I still believe that. I do. I believe that they tell us the worst part of the polling so that it will ignite people to start voting. I also think they do it so that the other side will feel more confident and that they won't go and vote. So I think they play us with the polling. I don't believe the polling because it's not reflective of what's going on in the country. Like I said before, I don't see any political signs. I don't hear any political talk. Nobody is running around, saying, all right, so you see a Trump flag every, once in a while, but you do see a Harris one every once in a while.
Mhm.
It's not as black and white as the polls are telling us it is.
Right.
I think it's, I think it is a very close race. I don't understand how. And I don't even think it is a close race. I think it's the gerrymandering, and I think it's the how they split us up as we vote. Because if you just let people vote, Republicans would never win another election. They have not won the popular vote probably since Reagan was president. Like
Hmm.
even George Bush didn't win the popular vote after 9/11. It was Florida that the governor said, yeah, he won. He didn't fucking win. They cheat. And then they turn it around and like the Democrats are cheating. We're not smart enough to fucking cheat. You guys have all the fucking Yale people on your side and you have figured out how to cheat.
No, I think we
Seriously.
have, well, Democrats have Yaleys too, but we have a conscience. That's the difference.
The
That's the
moral
difference.
difference between the two parties is probably more upsetting to me than anything else.
Mm.
You know, like I like with my friends that are either on the fence or they lean more towards Republicans, the morality of it is what gets me. I'm sorry, but when he made fun of the disabled person, that should have been enough.
Yeah,
When he admitted to
truly,
raping someone, that should have been enough. And I
truly.
don't understand why they say, I'm going to let that go. I don't understand that.
I don't
And
either.
these are people that I like. These are people I have things in common with.
Yep.
These are people that I enjoy having a conversation with.
Yeah.
And yet they're okay with this. But would
Yeah.
you be okay with it if it happened to someone in your house?
Right.
Because Nancy Reagan wouldn't do stem cell research until it happened to her husband. And then all of a sudden, stem cell research was something right there at the top. So if your daughter is raped, would you still vote for this guy?
Yep.
And unfortunately, I know people who their daughter was raped and they're still voting for this man
Yep.
because the price of gas is more important than their daughter. That's why. And I do believe that a lot of women, especially white women who we are like, oh, we're not oppressed. We have the freedoms. They're still voting with their husbands. Their husbands are still telling them who to vote for. So in the United States now, we have this movement going where women are putting stickies in bathroom stalls that say no one goes into the voter box with you. Don't vote. You don't have to vote with your husband. But there are husbands that will stand right behind you to make sure that you're voting the way you're supposed. I have a friend who she votes with her husband. Her husband tells her who to vote for. She doesn't want to pay attention. She don't want any of it. I'll just vote for whoever he tells me to. I'm like, well, you do know that the guy he's telling you to vote for is a rapist. Is that okay with you? You do know that the guy he's telling you to vote for, you know, makes fun of disabled people. You're good with that. You're good with that.
I just, yeah, I,
Doesn't
it's
like
beyond
gay
me.
people.
Well, and
Yeah.
that was really a big
The
part of
fact that
me.
they are voting for these people who say we are aborting babies after birth. We are giving sex changes to children in elementary school. You drop them off in the morning as boys and they come home in the afternoon as girls. Number one, the nurses are not even allowed to give them Advil. I don't understand where the operating room is where they're doing these. We can't even get a nurse in some schools because there's no budget. So now you're saying that there's an operating surgery in the school that the kids go into in the morning, and then in the afternoon they have taken off their penises and made them vaginas? Really? And they're getting back on the bus and going home? Like, if you just think about it logically, you would burst out laughing. And these people believe that this is happening. They believe that they are dropping their children off at school and they're coming. What? Are you fucking retarded? Like, I know it's a terrible word, but sometimes it just needs to be said. You're a fucking retard if you believe that this shit is happening. Right? I mean, that should just be a commercial right there. Like, seriously. Some of the shit that they say, the baby is born and now you're going to kill it.
I
Now
can't
you're going to,
even believe that this is like real. Like, you know what? Like, I can't believe we're even talking about this in any kind
I
of
know.
real life scenario because
And that
it's so
they're talking about
absurd.
it seriously. They are seriously talking about this.
It's
I
incredible.
have not once ever seen one of my neighbors come over, steal a pet, and start eating it. Never once. Not once. Not once.
And that's the thing
Like,
is,
how do
in
you
all
believe this
seriousness, with these things, with these accusations that they throw out I mean, and Vance said himself, I will make up whatever I need to make up. I will create these
to get
stories
the
to get the
media
attention and the
to talk
media
about
time. But what they
it? Yeah,
forget is that there is real cause and
consequences.
effect of these things. Those poor kids in Springfield that, are
Hmm.
being harassed and need police company to get to school. And, I mean, and again, it was all made up. They're all there legally. They're
And
all
he said
contributing
last night during,
to the community. And
he
so they
said last
forget
night
that these
that
things
the
that they say
illegal,
affect people.
yeah. So when they fact checked him last night, I think this is the time when they told that he said, "You're fact checking me,"
Mhm.
because he was lying and he knew he was
Yeah,
lying. And they said that they bust in thousands of illegal immigrants into Springfield. And the moderator was like, they're there legally. He's like, well, you're not supposed to be fact checking me.
yeah,
Okay, but they're not there illegally. They're there
right.
legally. They brought them in so that they would work and they would build the community back up. And that's exactly what they did. And
Yeah,
if you ever have met a Haitian person, which I'm pretty sure most of these people have not, especially the people in the middle of the country have probably never seen a brown person. So it's very easy to say, oh, they're bad. How many black people are in the middle of the country? They're not, because it's fucking scary in the middle of the country. You got fucking Mississippi. I wouldn't want to live in the swamps of Mississippi. It's scary down there. And then you have this asshole who's saying that the brown people and the black people are eating your fucking pets and they're taking all your housing. Have you ever met a brown person? Probably not. Brown people don't really commit that many crimes. It's the fucking white men that are committing all the crimes.
yeah,
Let's just put the blame where it is. How
yeah.
many school shootings have been a brown person?
Right.
None. How many have been a woman? None. How many have been a white 20 something year old male?
Yeah,
Too many to count.
yeah,
But yet we think the problem is black and brown people.
yeah.
The truth is looking right at us. We can see what the truth is. White men feel as though they are going to start being treated the way they have treated the rest of the world for centuries and centuries, and they are terrified about it. And it's
Mhm.
causing mental illness in them, and that's why they are lashing out like this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Crazy.
This whole subject makes me crazy. In case you haven't been able to tell. This is going to be
Well,
at least a 3 or 4 segments.
yeah.
No one's sitting here for an hour and a half watching us.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, when anybody asked Kent, like when he left or some kind of, because he moved to Europe during the Clinton administration, and he was like, as soon as he got impeached for Monica Lewinsky, he was like, that's it. Politics is over. That was the turning point for him, which honestly, if you think about it, really is when Republicans lost their shit because, what I mean, let's be honest. What president hasn't had some kind of dalliance as president? I mean,
Oh,
everybody's had
they
their
all have.
affairs.
They
And
all have.
so,
The only one that hasn't probably was Biden and Obama. Those would be the only two that didn't. The rest of them all did. You know
yeah.
that they did.
And you know that
And Carter, Carter.
even the Congress people, are having their side affairs and things like that. I mean, you read about it when they get caught. Um,
And abortion. They've all had abortions. So yeah, let's take away abortions because that's not going to affect you at all.
right, right. So, again, for Ken, it was the lunacy of that changed the scope of politics. Like they stopped politicking at that point and it became personal attacks and undermining the person. So, um, and let's see. Well, with when Clinton was in office, that's when there was Newt Gingrich and I can never remember the
Yeah,
other
he's
guy's
the
name.
one. He's the one
Um,
that started all this shit.
Newt and who was the other one? Oh God, I can never remember his name. It'll come to me later on. But I mean, he was just in, another Newt Gingrich. They put all of this in motion. Well, that was what, in the
Yeah.
80s. So that was 40 years ago now,
hmm
right?
It was the other two that are there too, McConnell and
Graham. Well, yeah,
Graham.
they just continue. I saw I saw a talking point of Lindsey Graham when he was on some show and it was just after Trump started calling Harris mentally disabled. And the reporter was like, "What do you have to say about this? Like, are you offended?" And he was like, yeah, okay, so her policies are batshit crazy." And you're just like, but you're not going to say that she's not mentally, like, that he shouldn't be saying that. Like, you're not saying anything contrary to the fact that he's out of line, you know? And so this is giving him that pass. This is the one thing that I've never, and this is, deep within my soul that politicians, regular people, it doesn't matter. When you have this level of a narcissist or someone in a position and they never get called out, they never get pulled out onto the carpet for the behavior or the decisions that they make that are just complete, just not in the realm of being right or polite or whatever. I cannot process it on an emotional, spiritual level. Like, I just don't understand how anybody could listen to that and be like, yeah, all right, well, what do you want me to
Yeah.
say? Well, we all decent people want you to say he shouldn't be saying that. That is not a part of American political discourse. This is not allowed. That is going across the line. I mean, Wall said it perfectly. Where's the firewall? Where is the line
Right.
where there is, you can say, you know what? This is just too much. Like, we've
Yeah.
given you leeway, but this is too much. This has
Yeah.
got to stop.
Yeah. Well, when he said to Vance, he's like, the only reason you're here is because he tried to kill the last one.